see, we have, I see Mary, is Jeff Smith on there?
I'm sure it's not.
Well, I've got 4.
Oh, here's Jeff right there.
Okay. That's, I'm not missing, it's 12.
Maybe I don't know.
Okay. But we have,
Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Justice Services Advisory Board for August 28, 2020 to order. Roll call, please.
Okay, roll call, Reverend Dwell,
Present.
Mr. McBride,
Here.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith, Jeff Smith. I see him. Dr. Garza,
Here.
Miss Lee. She's not on that. Miss Schmidt.
Here.
Miss Taylor.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to start off, due to cases that are currently affecting the jail, and there is an agenda. I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda as printed and make adjustments accordingly.
I would second that motion.
Ready for a vote?
All right. All in favor, Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Dr. Garza,
Yes.
and Ms. Lee, get on. Okay, Ms. Schmidt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
okay, Reverend Duval.
Yes.
We're just still waiting.
Okay, thank you. I want to start off by reviewing the agenda minutes. Before we approve them, I'd like us to look over those minutes from July 24th.
Excuse me, Duval, this is Steve Capizzi from the County Counselor's Office.
Yeah,
I heard you made a motion and it was seconded and voted on to amend the agenda. Is there a reason for the agenda?
I'm sorry, is there a reason why we're amending the agenda?
Yeah, is there anything specific that you want to put as part of the record of why you are moving to amend the agenda? Just in case we have a challenge
Okay.
to it.
We'll start by the previous director is no longer with us, and the information from the previous meeting needs to be discussed. And it needs to be more discussion before I adopt the minutes. And then the rest of the agenda, there are things we want to change. For example, new business, we want to have that discussion on the top end of the meeting.
And Reverend, I can respect that. And that agenda being, there is a requirement for an agenda to be, released 24 hours in a meeting. So just want to make sure that, you're doing this or you're making the motion because of the recent events, and maybe it would be proper to, give a timeline of when the director resigned, just
Okay, I caught.
emergency circumstances.
You were extremely garbled, so I didn't hear half of what you said. So could you repeat it so we can, because I'm not hearing.
I apologize. Yes. My concern, Reverend, is that, we got to give, the board has to give the public adequate notice of an agenda. And since since the motion was made this morning to amend the agenda, I think it would be proper to put in the reasons why the agenda was. You did, the director had resigned, but I think it would be proper to put in the record, that timeline. So the public is aware, if they weren't aware, why the agenda is being amended.
Okay, thank you. The current director resigned 2 days prior to this meeting, which was on Wednesday evening. Not able to connect with what we were going to discuss. I made efforts yesterday to get some clarity on the agenda, and in talking to board members, the acting director, Mr. Darby, talking to others, county officials, it became clear that to have a consistent flowing agenda today, there needed to be some changes to address those by changing the agenda. Now, and when I say changing the agenda, changing the order of the agenda.
Yeah, Dr. Reverend Duvall, could I speak to that and just agree with you? Just so it's patently clear to everyone, including in the minutes and to Steve, it's the same agenda. We're not changing the actual agenda. It's just the order of the agenda. And I think that's always in the purview of the chair and the committee.
Thank you, Dr. McBride. Steve, any more comments?
No, Reverend, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to draw attention to last month's advisory board minutes, which are on this agenda. On the first page would be under items 2. It states, Mr. Benasco informed the board about the new DJS project to install 360-degree cameras throughout the entire jail. Tentatively, the contractors will be coming in August to begin the install. We're going to ensure that we have a discussion about that, which is already on the agenda. The next item, Mr. Benasco presented information about the 2021 budget process to include capital improvement projects. This is a joint initiative with Valerie Nelson, Office of Correction Medicine. Mr. Benasco asked the advisory board for their input in participating with this process. For the record, that was the director last month. We're requesting that these items that are listed here continue to stay on going forward. Further down, Mr. Benasco spoke about forming subcommittees to include the advisory board. I know that's general, but as I recall in the discussion, the advisory board would be offered several different subcommittees to ensure our participation or advice can be offered in these projects and in these committees as the operation of the jail. We want to ensure that that stands. I'll make mention on the second page of my colleague, Dr. Alexander Garza, spoke of the need for a well-defined structure as to how things are worked or communicated. He stated that this will help bring a sense of order and transparency. Based on all of what we're all experiencing, it is imperative that we listen to the advice of Dr. Garza. The only way we're going to fix these things are to communicate in a timely manner with full transparency and honesty. The board is requesting that to continue to be. Thirdly, on the third page, and I apologize because I just started vetting these this morning just to ensure we hold on to what was direction we were going. And so I just reviewed some of the ones that I felt I wanted to bring up today, and then we'll ask for the adoption of these minutes. On page 3, I recommended that Mr. Benasco communicate to the DJS staff that they are free to contact the advisory board with their issues. I know that still seems to be something that's not clear, but from the advisory board perspective, we want that offered, especially since there's been so many conversations that have been public, that are emails. We're just attuned to some ourselves. We want to ensure that we're communicating and tying and closing this gap. We're not picking a side, we're picking apart the issues to make sure we can fix what's going on in the jail. Mr. Smith, my colleague Jeff Smith, inquired about the timeline of investigations and had specific questions about a current investigation. I'm going to ask that the assistant director, that the acting director, within a timeline, check on the status of the Clayton Police Department's investigations, on the status of Wesley Bell's investigation, and the status that the St. Charles County Justice Center was supposed to do some review. We just want to know the status. It's been several days. We'd like to at least get some concrete answer as to what the timeline is when all 3 of these investigations are going to conclude, if we can get an update. So now, without any objection, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes from July 24th, 2020.
Phil,
Yes?
it's Mary. This is just a detail that I noticed in our past minutes too, especially now that everybody down there is wearing a mask. I noticed that in our minutes, we list the roll call of the attendees of the advisory board, but we do not list the guests who are attending from within the jail and county government. And I think it's important that be in the record as to who was in what meeting. Just going forward, it's helpful for me to know who knows what and who heard what. And so if we could start that today and maybe go back and amend the last one as well, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Is it possible? Yeah.
It's pretty standard in most minutes in most meetings that I've attended.
Thank you, Mary. So we'll retract my motion. I'd like to make a motion that we amend the minutes to add in all those persons' names and identity to reflect in the minutes from July 24th and going forward.
But with that objection, I have no problem with approving the July minutes.
This is Spring, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
So I do have a clarification of one of the pieces that I recommended for the motion in the minutes. I think it is a little bit vague, and I know that I probably talked at length about it, so I understand the vagueness, but in the section 2 where we were discussing the communication piece, and I said that we just requested a document for the process piece for this level of review and the subcommittee structure. I think there were really 3 pieces in there that were distinct requests. One was a document for the processes of communication to the board about the various and assorted issues that were taking place in the jail. How would the board be communicated with? Then the second was the part of the discussion about the process of reviewing the investigations, like specifically. And then the third was this subcommittee structure, that we'd be given a list of the subcommittees, what they're responsible for, and the timelines and expectations for when they would meet. And it was kind of a broader conversation that encompassed all of those discussions sort of wrapped up into one. So I understand, but it looks a little vague, and I'm not sure if I were reading this later, if I would know exactly what the documents were that were expected to be produced.
Reverend Duval, I agree with Spring. The other thing is that the third part, the discussion about the subcommittee, was really specifically, not that we want more subcommittees, but that we specifically wanted to get together a diverse group to talk about what the process for investigations are themselves. Building a standard process around investigations that isn't so reactive, but it is standard. I know that corrections think they have that standard, but from my experience, I think in our discussion last meeting, I think we all agreed that that we don't know what the structure is, and that was partly to Alex's point too.
Okay, so back to Spring. Spring, is it possible then that you'll email the blurb for the revision that you want to reflect it to Penny, and then we'll take up the motion to accept next month?
I will. Let me just clarify with the rest of the board members to make sure that I'm not forgetting a piece, that the 3 documents upon request were all of the types of communication to the board and how they would be done and when. The subcommittees that were being proposed in a variety of ways, like what they were intended to be, and what the process would be for doing that. And then the explicit process for the conduct of investigations, especially since last month they were talking about adding in the new kind of like a morbidity and mortality review similar to corrections medicine. Is that correct on the 3 documents? That's how I remembered it. Then that'll be my blurb. I'll send it.
Okay, so thank you, Spring. You'll put some clarification and some more meat to that portion and send it. And then next month, we'll adopt the minutes for July.
I will.
Sorry. Okay. All right, I'd like to move on. So I suspend that, I take off the motion to adopt the minutes. They'll be held over until next month. Now I'd like us to move to a discussion for new business. And I'll ask my colleagues on the board if anyone would like to make some comments on the new business portion before we go further into the agenda.
Reverend DeVoe, can you identify who is in the room, please?
Absolutely. We'll start with the acting director, please.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Can everybody hear me? That's good. Great. My name is Darby Howard. I have been asked to assume the role of interim director, by the county executive. Just to let everybody know, my priority is first and foremost the county, Department of Justice Services, those inmates in our custody, and the staff that work here. That's my first and foremost priority. Is to making sure we operate a safe, secure jail for everybody that comes in here. And my goal is to work collectively with everybody in this group here, to make sure that process moves forward. I'm gonna do all that I can in a collaborative effort with everybody here to make sure that we do make this the best facility and a safe place for anybody that comes in here. Thank you.
I'm Aaron Levin, research statistician.
Can everybody hear Aaron? Okay.
I'm Trisha Rogers. I'm the corrections compliance supervisor.
Valerie Nelson, COO for the Health Services.
I'm Raymond Barnes, IT manager for Justice Services.
Penny Martin, office manager for the director's office.
Tony Weaver, change control for Justice Services.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Sorry, I had forgot that. I see my colleague Jeff Smith wants to speak. Go ahead, Jeff, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend. I appreciate the opportunity. So I have a few thoughts that I guess would come under new business. The first is just that I think we have been charged by the county executive with determining the scope of a review, and I don't think we need to take a lot of time on that this morning, and we should probably issue a formal response in writing to the county executive's letter. But I would certainly favor a broad review. I don't think an independent review should be limited to the actions of the former director, but based on all the communications that we have received over the last couple months, some anonymous, some not anonymous from staff, it seems like there are broader issues and challenges going on that merit examination. So I would encourage a broad review of all the different types of things that have been characterized in the letters and the testimony to the county council and other things that we have read about in the Post-Dispatch. Secondly, given the some of the characterizations related to favoritism over the last several months, it would seem to me to be a wise course of action to recommend a moratorium on promotions or salary increases during this interim period. Obviously we are not a governing body and cannot make a determination about it, but I think, a recommendation could carry some weight. Thirdly, I would like to see a formal role established for the advisory board in the search for a permanent director. I can't say exactly what that would look like. Maybe it would be one representative, or maybe it would be interviews that the advisory board would as a whole be a part of. But I think we should at least think about what that would look like and ensure that we do have a formal role in the process. We know that, I always say smart people learn from their mistakes, but very smart people learn from others' mistakes. And previously, I think there were a lot of probably red flags and indications during the last director's hiring process that should have been, I think, more should have had more scrutiny. And I'd like for collectively our board to play more of a role in helping vet future candidates. And then finally, I would hope that any review that does take place also, and I probably should have said this when I talked about the review, I think it should probably re-examine recent disciplinary actions or status changes that took place under the previous director, because we know that there's a strong suggestion based on what we have read and learned about the last 24 hours that some personnel moves were probably made with some questionable motives. So perhaps any broad review should re-examine those recent moves. So those are just some thoughts that I've had. I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, if you want to entertain discussion of any of that, or if you are just looking for kind of brief feedback right now, but I wanted to get a few of those thoughts off my chest. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members that would like to weigh?
Mary, that's her.
Yes, ma'am.
So I echo all of Jeff's ideas, and it won't surprise you all to know that I think that the 6 members of the board and Spring as well have been really concerned about what we've been hearing lately, and it's disheartening, I would say. As to the first item, the issue of the independent investigation, I think it's worth backing up just one step, Jeff, because I think the idea of the independent investigation came from several members on this board almost kind of concurrently, and then we expressed that to the county executive, so that even though I know now he has agreed to do that, I think it's worth our making a motion that there should be an independent investigation and just having that recommendation on the books because it sprung from us. And I'm not suggesting that he would in any way turn turn back on this, but I think for the record, it's important that the public knows that that this board came up with the idea. Maybe it bubbled up other places too, but that we make a formal recommendation. So I would like to make a motion that there be an independent investigation and be as general in my motion as possible so that we can go forward and work with the county executive on the scope and what that looks like. So my motion is that there be an independent investigation of activities at the Justice Services. And I'm not sure I think later we can put a timeline on it, but if that's my motion, as simple as that.
I second.
Can I, this is Spring, can I offer maybe a split? I think there's an investigation, but some of the things that I heard from Jeff Smith were more maybe like of a broader scope, more like, I don't know, an audit or a kind of a broader review of a wider, like the broader scope that we were talking about. Like, is it is an independent investigation likely to cover, like, is it going to have a specific topic, a specific set of topics, or
Tim?
is it going to be sort of a broader review?
Tim has something to say.
Yeah, I appreciate all the suggestions Jeff made, and I think we'll take them one at a time. And I agree with what Mary said, and I would be in favor of a motion too. We have a motion on the table. I agree with the friendly comments that Spring is making. The only thing I might make a friendly suggestion to Mary's motion, if she agrees to it, it was in the county executive's letter that it be an outside independent review. So if we could add the word outside, I would agree with that. And maybe we could, and I think you said it along the way, that the scope of the review, that we specify what the scope of the review be, and that we get back to the county executive within a very short period of time about what the scope is. And I think that's a little bit about what Spring Schmidt's getting to. Because frankly, I just read the county executive's letter yesterday. We just got it yesterday, and I'm still percolating in my head about what that scope should be. And I think it should be fairly broad. It should be, as Jeff said, broader than just the current, the past director's situation, but it should go into other issues.
Bill?
Yes, Mary.
I just want to make sure I hope some of the community are listening, but for the benefit of people who don't know some of our inside baseball stuff, we did receive a letter from the county executive yesterday agreeing to an independent investigation and independent outside investigation and inviting us to work with him to develop what the scope is. So I think given that invitation, I think to have further conversations here about the details or the scope of the, it's probably wasted time, because I think that's going to be our work to do probably in the next week. But with your amendment, Tim, I agree. Motion for an outside independent investigation. That's my recommendation.
With the scope to be specified within a week. Something like that. Yep.
That's fine.
That helps me. That helps me also. Thank you. I agree.
So, Reverend, you mind if I have a couple of comments?
Please, Dr. Garza.
Yeah, so I'll just, again, support my colleagues on the advisory board. There's a couple of things that I just wanted to make sure that we were all clear on. So I'm sure that everybody has seen County Executive Sam Page's letter and asking the advisory board to weigh in on this important topic. So, as an advisory board, it's very disturbing when we get information from people that work in the jail. And it's some of it is fairly shocking. Now, I don't know how true they are, though, which is why we need an independent investigation. So to Jeff's point, to Dr. Smith's point, this can't just be about the immediate past director, Raul Benasco, because some of the information is really implicating the entire leadership structure at the Justice Services. And so it can't just be narrowly focused on the actions of one individual who's no longer with the jail services. It wouldn't be fair. And so in support of my other colleagues, this has to be an outside investigation. There's just no other way to do it. I've been doing a little bit of background work and seeing if there's an inspector general. And of course there isn't one with the St. Louis County, but there's plenty of examples in other counties where there is an office of inspector general that's independent of the different services. So I know that we have an internal affairs department at the Justice Services, but it would not be appropriate for that agency to do this review. I've pulled up a couple of reports, one from Cuyahoga County, which is the city of Cleveland, which I think could serve as a good framework for how to go about doing this. But I would strenuously object to anybody within the Justice Services doing this review. It needs to be outside of Justice Services, maybe even outside of the county, if we can find a federal asset to come in and do a review. But this is extremely concerning, and it gets really to the core of how Justice Services operates. We need to have full faith and confidence that the leadership team at Justice Services can carry out the mission of running the jail. And so I full-heartedly support the motion by Mary Taylor.
Phil, one more thing, if I will. So I've also done just a cursory review of the precedent for outside independent investigators in county jails, because as you can imagine, it's different than prisons, state prisons, and it's different than federal prisons who have some of that infrastructure already anticipated, and we just don't. So there is really, in the last 5 years, quite a few independent investigations that have been done related to county jails within Missouri. So I think we can have some comfort that we're not asking for something really extraordinary. And I thank Alex very much for his comments, because when I say it's disheartening, when I listen to people who call me, who work in the Justice Center and tell me stories, when I read letters emails that we've gotten, or read letters, and then this morning, read things in the Post-Dispatch that I have never heard of. It is just heartbreaking. And if and so I say that only because, not just to play the violin, but to emphasize again the seriousness of an independent outside investigator I believe unrelated to the county.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The motion has been aired and second. I'd like a vote, please. Roll call.
Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Garza,
Yes.
Lee. She never got on.
By the way, she's been trying to get into the meeting. I sent her an invite. If somebody could send her another invite.
Yeah, I sent the link too.
I sent it as well.
Okay. Anyways, excuse me for interrupting.
And Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Any other comments for new business that any other advisory members would like to add?
Did you hear my vote? Because I didn't hear my name.
Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Did Reverend Duvall vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I have.
Any other comments? My colleagues would like to make?
Can we turn some of Jay Smith's other ideas into motions as well? Because frankly, I agree with all of his points. I think, and even if it's a recommendation as opposed to a mandate, I think that it's a recommendation that we formally offer at the very least for the board members to be part of the director search. And I also think that it's worth discussing that we at least make a recommendation that some of the, the promotions and some of those other things that are talked about are at least paused or on hold, whether, we don't have that operational authority. But I think there are some things under consideration about that Mr. Smith brought up. Are there other related pieces to that warrant being turned into motions?
If I could speak up, Reverend Duvall, I totally agree with Spring Schmidt that it would be worth, I don't know if we have the power to actually say that this happens, but I'd like to say that we strongly recommend these two things that Jeff mentioned at least. So the formal role in those two items, they're in the minutes.
Okay.
So I don't know if we need a motion to that effect, but if we need one, I'm in favor of it.
We just agree to it being a recommendation in the minutes.
I would prefer a motion voted on by each one of us, please. Jeff, do you want to turn yours into motions?
Sure. I would be happy to do that. So I guess the first would be a motion. I would like to make a motion that we establish a formal role for the advisory board in the process of selecting a new permanent director.
Second.
Was that Dr. Garza that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Reverend Duvall,
Yes.
Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt,
Yes.
and Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
Can you also include my yes vote, even though I seconded? I think I still have to vote. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, the second motion, third motion, please.
So secondly, I would move that we institute a moratorium, or at least I guess you would call it a temporary moratorium on all promotions or salary increases for those remaining in the same position until the hiring of a permanent director.
So Jeff, if I can make a friendly amendment?
Yeah.
How about a freeze on any personnel actions?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, freeze on personnel actions. Do you think we should include inside of this motion a recommendation that recent personnel actions be included as part of the comprehensive review we're recommending?
Yeah, I think so.
So,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is Spring. If I could also make a friendly amendment, I would not use personnel actions. That encompasses every type of personnel action. We use the same types of processes in county government for each of those, which would include like potential disciplinary actions as well as sort of all kinds of other pieces that may be that may be standardized or necessary. So
we don't we don't want to tie the hand if there's a necessary disciplinary action. We don't want to tie the hands of supervisors from doing those. So should we say status and salary changes?
Can we write that in and have it brought back as language just to make sure that our personnel department can find that within the charter to make sure that we can do that? Can Mr. Confusey write something that?
Yeah, I think to Spring's point, well, we can't as an advisory board, order anybody to do anything. I mean, all we can do is recommend. So we can recommend, you can make qualifying language like recommend no significant personnel changes until a new director is brought on board, something like that. But of course, we're
recommendation. They're going to look
Right.
at it. They're going to look at it in detail after we make our recommendation anyway. I'd hate to put that off.
That makes sense. I think the recommendation piece, because we have these structures for how to make employee changes, and if it's too broad, like it can get weird. So I know that what we're recommending, I think in simplicity, are these kind of major salary changes around promotions or like fundamentally redoing someone's duties and salaries accordingly, or all the rest of those types of things. And I think that recommendation, I would certainly agree to a motion like that at this point.
I'll second it.
What's the exact?
Yeah, let's make sure we know what we're recommending.
So how about we recommend a temporary moratorium on status and salary changes until the hiring or until the start of a permanent director, as well as the inclusion in any comprehensive independent review of recent changes to personnel status and salaries.
Not to be a pain, I like that. Can I make one modification that we say significant? Because if they get a cost of living increase or something like that, I don't want it to feel like they can't do that, even though it's a recommendation.
That's
something
fine.
that applies to the entire population.
That's fine.
Like a clear motion for the record.
So we're recommending a temporary moratorium on status and salary changes until the start of the permanent, until we get a new permanent director, as well as inclusion, keep going, of significant, what's the last part? The inclusion of, you have to help me out here.
As well as the inclusion of significant salary and status changes in any independent review or of any independent review or investigation into the department. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy.
Back again. I believe I have it. I need someone to second it.
I'll second that motion, Jeff. Ready for a roll call vote, please.
Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Dr. Garza,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor, and Reverend Duvall.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, for
Okay. Any more comments? Otherwise, we'd like to go ahead and get back on the agenda. Any other comments from the advisory board? Thank you. We now would like Mr. Howard to give an update, please.
Sure. So as of this past Tuesday, we have tested approximately an additional 75 patients since the last report. So overall, we are looking at having tested just over 2,000 patients in the jail since beginning in March, I believe it was. We have 29 unique patients who have tested positive. The significant upward trend that we did see earlier on, I guess it was late July, that has leveled out in the last couple of weeks. We really have only seen 1 or 2 additional new positive patients that are coming in with each cycle. But all of those 29 continue to be asymptomatic and all new inmates to the jail. So if we have to have any kind of a trend, then that's a decent one to have. We are seeing everyone that has been contagious or positive, they are newly admitted into the jail. So just as a refresher, that process, as it looks like for admitting new folks in, they are quarantined for approximately 14 days in specific housing units before they are moved into the general population housing units. And we do have a requirement to receive 2 negative COVID tests before moving them into that general population. So I think that's the process that we will maintain until something else in the environment, would cause us to look at that differently. And so far, so good, I think.
Fortunately, your graph is coming up blank on my Google screen. I'm guessing they're seeing the same thing. Are you guys seeing that graph?
No.
What I thought.
Reverend Duvall, if I could raise a question.
Yes, please.
First of all, thank you for that report. And just a quick clarification. I think I heard this, but I just wanted to clarify it. And you said that all 29 of these cases are people that were identified on intake and none of them are community spread within the jail. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought I knew from your periodic reports. And I just want to say again that I think your protocols are working really well and I applaud you for your hard work on this. And I think, it would be better if this was 0, but 29 out of 2,000 is really quite good given the community spread that we see outside in St. Louis. And I think this speaks to the hard work and your excellent protocols you have in place. And if you look at prisons around Missouri and around the country, this is something to be proud of. So I applaud you on that.
Phil, I echo that. It is, having looked at the initial plans, Valerie, that you ordered really, really early on, you were, it's just amazing amongst all the bad news that we have. It's just really important that we say what a wonderful job you have done and the staff have done on this, because it could have been so much worse. All we have to do is look into counties nearby, and we didn't see the uptick until the community spread saw an uptick too. So that was paralleled. I know that Alex has said this before, but I think you ought to publish these best practices. You ought to get that stuff out, because I think people could really learn what you and the medical staff and corrections folks have done on this issue. This is no small thing.
Yeah, Reverend, this is Dr. Garza. Just make a couple of comments. I want to, I share Dr. McBride and Mary Taylor's comments. Valerie and Spring, you guys, and Emily Doucette, you guys have just done an outstanding job in keeping COVID out of the jail, and then keeping it controlled when it is inside the jail. And so you're to be commended for that. Thank you.
I will speak for both of our departments that we appreciate that, because I know that I've thrown our corrections partners for many loops over these months of trying to figure out what the best way is to manage the housing units, and we've gotten pretty good at being agile and flexible. you want me to discuss the rest of the dashboard? There are just a few highlights, otherwise we could do that via email.
Okay. Without any objection,
Could I make a suggestion about the dashboards and that, because I thought we were supposed to be getting these things ahead of time so that we could review them before the presentation. And I have no objections to you hitting the highlights, but I just want to reiterate again that it's really difficult for me to ingest it all without having some time on my own to look over the pages. So I know that probably there were some good reasons why we didn't get them, but I wouldn't have any objection to tabling the review of the entire dashboard and just to hear some highlights pending our receipt of them.
Absolutely. The real highlights would be to call out that we did, you'll see an uptick in the percentage of persons that required medical care. And again, this, just as a reminder, this metric, the scope of it looks at any care that's taken out or provided outside of the facility. And the reason for that increase over the last 2 months has been because we have been opening up the definition of where those outside consults should be applied, rather than delaying for the next week or so if we didn't have proper protocols for COVID, knowing that the patient could come back into the facility at that time. So we're just seeing an increase of those partnerships in the community with the specialists. And the next piece that I would point out is what you'll see on the second page with the percentages, or the percentage of people that we're seeing in the clinic. We discovered that last month we actually had an operational error happening across a good portion of our staff that did quite clearly affect the data. And it was a process within the electronic medical records. Closing of that record, there's a specific step that has to happen that was not happening. So this happened.
I do, Miranda. I think Amanda's right on that.
Okay, I'll continue on. Anyway, so that's the reason for the up and down that you'll see on that. And likewise, we have seen a continual increase in the percentage of folks that are seen in the infirmary, and that is really due to our process of cycling patients through the infirmary for observation if we identify or they report any type of COVID-related symptom. So we continue to take them out of the housing units and put them into the infirmary for closer observation and that bigger isolation. And likewise, we're seeing an increase in the mental health visits in the infirmary, and that's also because we have additional resources now we have an additional provider that is that's serving the infirmary. So we're pulling folks into there on a more frequent cadence. I think those are the main changes that you'll see in the dashboard.
okay, thank you. I'm sorry, everyone, can you just take a brief second? Okay. Happy to report, now after the dashboard has been successful from the medical side. I know several members, several of us have been requesting something similar from the correction side. And so today will be our first introduction to it. It's still a work in progress, so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Levin.
Okay, do you think?
Okay, yours should be okay. For some reason, Adobe must have pulled itself off. Just trying to get it installed.
You want me to come over there with the mouse, keyboard and mouse?
While he does that, do you want to make any introductory?
Yeah.
comments?
Hi everyone, my name is Aaron Levin. I'm the new research statistician for the Justice Services Department. I've been here since the end of July, so about 4 weeks. And one of the things I've been tasked with doing is getting progress started on a statistical dashboard for some of the metrics on the corrections side. So that's what I'm going to show in just a minute, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions from any of you all. You're seeing it?
Yep.
All right, cool. So again, this is kind of a work in progress, but here you can see sort of nine statistical windows and then a geospatial window on the left panel. And the idea is for each of these, you'll be able to hover over the respective panels and get monthly information on each of these metrics. So for example, the average monthly length of stay for released inmates per month, bookings and releases per month, use of force incidents per month, ER runs per month, and then demographic information like total population counts, and then broken down by race, age, and gender. And then on the left, we want to have a geospatial display where we can break the city and county collective area into zip codes. And then if you click on each zip code, you get a summary of the demographic and age information for the inmates in that hail from that particular zip code. So for example, from this particular zip code 63131, the average inmate age is 29.9. 11 inmates have been in the prison from that zip code since the beginning of 2019, and then the respective gender and race breakdown as well. So this is just, we have some more windows that we're playing with, and it's to be determined what will make the final dashboard and what won't, but this is the sort of at least the setup of the display that I'll be looking at.
Could I make a couple comments there, Reverend?
Sure.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for doing this. This is the right move by the Justice Services to hire somebody like you to do this work. So as we have done with our partners in corrections healthcare, there's at least a couple of us on the advisory board that are pretty well schooled in statistics, and we got together with corrections medicine to help them with their dashboard and what we felt was important. And
Sure.
I would offer that we do the same thing with you to make sure that we have the right statistic, or at least the right way of looking at statistics. Not that you're not, but I think we could offer some advice as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that would just in a separate chat, I suppose.
Yeah. No, that's totally fine. That's how we did it with corrections medicine. We just sat down and walked through everything and gave our advice. So thank you.
Great.
Reverend Duvall, if I could speak up.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree with what Dr. Garza said. And, again, I applaud you on this work. This is pretty fascinating. I was on that subcommittee with Dr. Garza, and, I'm sitting, this is the first time I'm seeing it, so I'll probably want to digest this some more. I think one of the things that I'll want to percolate on this is what do we really need to see as an advisory board in terms of what we can advise the justice staff on versus like things that are sort of out of our purview.
Sure.
I don't know if that's put the right way, but some of this strikes me as things that are related to criminal justice. The prosecuting office is a little bit what I'm sort of seeing here versus the structure of the jail. I mean, I find it pretty interesting, but I don't know. That's just a quick thought. But I think, is there a way this could be sent to us, like as Mary said, because I want to take some time to sort of percolate on it, or is there a way we can get a link to this so we can put our
Yeah.
cursors over it so we can play with this a little bit?
I'm working on that right now. Since I've been here just about 4 weeks, I am
Oh, well, okay.
relatively new to this ArcGIS Online format where the dashboards are built. So I've versed myself in how to build them, but I'm not quite as familiar with how to share the information. So I'm actually corresponding with a few of the people in the GIS team in the county, and I think they're going to be helpful in allowing me to share this with other people as needed. So I should be able to get back to you all on that pretty soon.
Okay, well, I applaud you for what you've done in 4 weeks. So,
Yeah.
again, I think holding a meeting with whoever you select, I think, and then we can do this in the meeting live too, would be fine.
And I should mention that these 10 displays here, the 9 plus the geospatial one on the left, really just came out of a brainstorming meeting that we had, 2 or 3 weeks ago about what the best things to kind of explore capturing in the dashboard would be. But by no means were they, final, hard and fast rules about we have to have this, we have to have that. So it's certainly open to change.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Aaron.
No problem.
You certainly have not been twiddling your thumbs for 4 weeks. That's for sure.
Any other comments from the board? Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to move on the agenda, item number 6, the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge. Can we have those individuals present, please?
Miranda, can you hear us? Yep.
Great.
Different to share your screen or the items you shared with me. Give me 1 second.
Again, can people identify themselves and their names and their roles, please?
Sure. So I'm Miranda Gibson, and I am the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge Grant Manager. And Dr. Beth Hubner is on as well. I'll let her introduce herself. Beth, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. It's not like I haven't been on 400 of these calls. I am Beth Hubner, professor of criminology at the University of Missouri St. Louis, and I have been part and leading the MacArthur initiative since its inception. And so we can start, Miranda, if you want.
Yep. Yeah, so we just wanted to share some of our strategies with you all today, and we've been working with the Safety and Justice Challenge since Beth started. I'm doing this in 2015, and I've been here for a year managing some of these strategies. And so we just wanted to give you all kind of an overview of that grant, and then also go a little bit deeper into one of our more successful strategies on the probation violation process. So Ray, if you could for the next slide. All right, thank you. So a little bit about the SJC. Since 2015, the MacArthur Foundation has been supporting the Safety and Justice Challenge, which supports local leaders in 52 jurisdictions to build on criminal justice related reforms in their local jurisdictions. So St. Louis County, we were awarded this in 2016 to build on some of our local efforts to safely reduce the jail population and safely also reduce ethnic and racial disparities. And so we got it in 2016, and then we're funded again in 2018, and we're up for renewal this year as well. And we hope to get more funding for 2 more years. And so just a couple of our partners that we have. Beth Hubner is professor with UMSL. She's our fiscal agent. And we also work very closely, of course, with Justice Services, the Circuit Court, the Public Defender, and the county prosecuting attorney's office, as well as the county executive's office and Missouri State Probation and Parole. One of the great things about this grant, not only getting, money to fund some of these things, but it's just the opportunity to build all of these relationships with our partners, as well as some other advocacy groups and treatment providers in the community. And we have a few strategies that we do as part of this grant. And with all of these strategies, we've seen a 38% decline in the average daily population, which has been great to see some of these strategies come into fruition and see some real change. And just to highlight some of those, the first being the expedited case processing work that we do with the population review team. We have a first appearance pilot, and we've had some pretrial services reform work that we've been doing, and also expanded pretrial and reentry services. And then finally, the expedited probation violation processing, which we're going to talk about today. You want to go to the next slide, Ray? So as I said, we're going to talk about the expedited probation violation process that we have. But just for some background, I'll pass it to Beth, who will talk about just that probation violation kind of on a national scope, just for a little bit of background.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Miranda. And I wanted to say, since I've been involved with this since the beginning, and I know some of you are maybe not as familiar, I'm happy to chat more. I know most of you are data focused, and that's where we started with this grant, was looking at the jail data and in many different permutations as we can. And because we are focused on data, I did want to make a note that Aaron's position is funded by the grant. So this is a justice service initiative. So when we look at that dashboard, we would like to be included in that discussion as well, because some of those initiatives, particularly some of the data on race and gender, are things that the MacArthur Foundation are working for. So we would like to be part of that discussion as well, given our focus on data. So we wanted to talk to you and give you some good news. Obviously, there's been lots of bad news. We wanted to talk about some of the great things that have been going on at the jail. And so I wanted to talk about technical violations. So we do know that more people are under probation supervision than any other correctional, any other term of supervision. So we have some, data here. And what we found when we were looking at the original data was that there were a large proportion of people in the jail for violations of probation. And most of those were technical violations. And when we dug even deeper, most of those were for substance abuse challenges, or people were afraid to report. In short, people were not in the community, doing violent crimes or risking the community. They were just having really large personal challenges often. And so then they were going to come back into the jail and were waiting a substantial period of time. The MacArthur Foundation always asks us to look at, who are you afraid of versus who are you mad at? And these probation were people that we were mad at. They were coming back in the jail waiting a really long time. So, and we know that even a short-term stay in jail can have really adverse consequences. And so we know it can affect earnings, things like that. So we really wanted to look at this group because we felt like we could intervene with them, keep the community safe, as well as keep jail populations down. I should say this is where one of the groups that initially had the largest disparity in terms of race as well. So that was one of our initiatives. You want to go to the second slide, or the next slide, I guess. Yeah, so just at the beginning, about a third of the jail population, depending, was there for a probation technical violation. We're going to start looking at some of these cost numbers. That's one of our next projects. But we know that they were there for a long time, and this costs a lot of money. And so, again, over 100 days, and people of color were staying there almost 112 days. So that's, again, a huge cost and a huge effect on people's lives as well. So we went to our friends, and I call them friends because they've been fantastic partners. So we went to our friends at Probation and Parole and said, hey, this is a really big challenge. What can we do next? So if you want to go to the next slide. Be great. So we were trying to figure out why people were basically getting stuck in the jail for probation violations. And it was usually, again, it was for these, often violations and things like that. We were waiting a long time for courts to make the decision, for judges to make the decision. And so we developed a new process, and probation and parole, free of charge. They do not get grant money for this. They're doing this for the betterment of the criminal justice system. They actually house probation and parole officers inside the jail now. And what they do is immediately screen someone once they come back to the jail, see how they're doing, see what their needs are. If they're low risk, and maybe they weren't reporting like they should, they work on re-engaging with them. They directly contact the judge and try to get that person, if it's safe and the judge agrees, back into the community so they can get back to work, get back to their families. So again, this is just a really innovative, low-cost way that we've been able to reduce the jail population by bringing partners together instead of having a siloed criminal justice system. You want to do the next slide? So we have some good results, and I know, again, a lot of you are pretty high-level statisticians, so we are doing a lot more analyses than we're going to show here. Part of this last part of the grant is really doing a lot of formal evaluations of these programs, but we can see a pretty large effect. So the percent of the total population that is people who have violated the probation is from 29 to 13%. So again, we've been able to move people out of here, mostly because we've been able to reduce their length of stay. If you want to go to the last slide or the next slide. And again, this 99 days, people were really, really getting stuck, for lack of a better word, and we were mad at them. So we've been able to reduce that to 12 days on average. It does vary, but we have a specific MOU with the specific protocol that once they're brought in, they must be screened. We have a pretty established screening form, try to get that information on that person, talk to the judge, and then have them released. Most of that time, those 60 days earlier, was just waiting for the court to act. This is really essential during times of COVID, where the courts aren't operating in the same way. Trisha and everyone there has done a great job helping probation and parole officers communicate with these clients while keeping health concerns at the front. So they've been able to continue doing this even through COVID-19. So these are just some of our basic results. And then Miranda and I can answer questions if you have them. And we were hoping we could come back in another time and tell you about some of the other great work that is being done in the jail. We have been asked to present this to many, many, many different agencies across the US. So this is a really innovative way, I think, to deal with something that most jails are dealing with across the US. So thank you.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Beth said there too, what's been really interesting is just that the Missouri Probation and Parole kind of gave these officers to us for free, and we see that it really is mutually beneficial for the courts. These cases get expedited, the judges get them off their dockets. Missouri Probation and Parole can reconnect with these people, and also because of the three that are housed in the jail, they don't have to send as many officers that are in the field typically into court and have them wait during the docket all day. And then of course we get those people processed and out of the jail, so that reduces our jail population as well. And then of course to the probationer that is in jail, he gets or she gets to get out and go back to the community, go back to work, keep up with their family. So it's really been a great partnership, and like Beth said, it's part of our MacArthur work, but it's kind of a free strategy that this hopefully can continue beyond MacArthur. And that's it. That's all that we have. Thank you. Again, if you have any questions for us on this or other work, we're more than happy to share or to chat at a different time.
Are there any questions from the board members?
Yeah. Hey, Reverend, this is Dr. Garza. So So first of all, great work. Really a fantastic job. Is there any way we could get a copy of the slides? And then have you written an abstract or anything yet with your results?
Yeah, we have, I have a couple short things. Again, we're gonna write some stuff up for the American Jail Magazine and other things, but absolutely, you can have whatever, we have. So
Yeah.
we can send you some stuff.
Awesome, thank you.
Right, and I did send the specific presentation to Penny. I think Penny can send that out to all of you on the board. And then Beth can maybe send her information to Penny, who can then send that out as well.
Great, thank you.
Reverend. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Reverend Wall.
Yeah, just a minute, Tim.
Oh, sorry.
Welcome, Twyla. Our colleague is on the call. Go ahead, Dr. McBride.
Yeah, welcome, Twyla. And again, I echo those comments. Very interesting in work, and I will want to follow that. And I wanted to see a copy of the slides too, so that'd be great. Just a couple of quick comments. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So one quick comment is I think, this is a pretty innovative and important program. And I think it should be stated, I just want to state it for the record that I think I've made this comment before. I think that any way that we can reduce the patient census at this point in the COVID situation probably will help reduce the spread of COVID, or has the potential to reduce the spread of COVID. So I think it's important that when you have a 30% or so reduction, we've seen a reduction in the census from 1,200 to some 800 or so. I think that's important. We have zero spread within the jail, so that's great. But, should that start to happen, it's better that we don't have people in there that don't need to be there. Number two, I think it's still, it was alarming the number of days that people were in the jail, and we saw that when I first got on the board about a year ago. One thing I sort of noticed, and I hesitated to make comments about the dashboard we saw earlier because I want to see it on paper and have it sent out and explore it a little bit further. But one of the things I saw, and if you want to punt this question to later, that's fine. I started this in Beth and Miranda, if you want to comment on this, because maybe you've seen the data. I just sort of saw a pretty quick increase in the number of days in the jail, waiting in the jail in the last like 3 or 4 months. And I don't know if that was real or if there's something going on. And I wonder if it's somewhat correlated with what's going on with this program. So if you're removing people that are, here's my hypothesis as an amateur statistician, if you're removing people that sort of are on bail or whatever, that are not long-term nonviolent criminals or whatever, then the people that are left behind are probably taking longer to process through the justice system. Is that a correct hypothesis, or what's going on with that increase in that line?
I think it's two things, and I know you've heard a little bit about our population review team. We can come back and talk about that as well, because we're digging into those numbers with the population review team. So it is partly that we've been able to take some of these short-termers out, but it's also that the courts are not operating in the same way. I think that's going to be our biggest challenge going forward, is that, the team did such a great job, continues to do such a great job. But if we can't get people through the courts, and court dates are in October, November, December now, some of those cases, which would have taken 100 days are now going to take 200 days or something like that. So I think we've been encouraging the courts to think about creative ways, and this is where our PRC comes in. Like, are there creative ways to get people in the community if it's safe, or to move some of these cases along? Because we're going to see the reverberating effects from COVID. Even if we all were fine tomorrow with COVID, it's going to take months for this backlog. And so this is where we're going to really need to work with our court partners to work on this. Otherwise, the jail population is going to have to go up.
I got it. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Phil?
Yes, ma'am.
So, thank you both so much for this presentation. And if you could provide us with your email addresses, I think that would be helpful too. So I am a moderate data lover, as some of you guys know. I mean, it's not my big love, but I get it. but I think I want to wear my hat today as what I think the data tells us about the drastic change in people's lives. So as somebody who has come into the jail every week until recently, when we were restricted for years, coming into the jail and just sitting and listening to women, that's just all I do. I tell them, you know, just talk, and they do. You know, the on the ground impact has been incredible. So the numbers of people I used to sit with who were there on technical probation violations, whose lives had completely changed overnight. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I really think it's helpful to say, as somebody who's worked in that community a lot, even so, when I hear story after story of one day they have a job and they have an apartment and they have their children with them, and the next day they don't. You know, the changes in people's lives for these kinds of things are not small things. And you multiply that by when I first came to the jail, average daily census was almost always between 13 and 1400 a day. I mean, that's just a huge, huge difference. So I applaud you for the work you're doing. I just want to say I notice it from a different perspective, you know, the personal perspective, and it just kind of on behalf of all those stories I've heard, those women, sit with women, the women's stories. Thank you so much. I think we'll see the effects of this in our community, and some of it will be intangible. You'll see the data, but the effects in our community and the stability that families will have because of this is just, you know, more appreciation than I can really express today. So thank you.
Thank you, Misty. And if I may, we're working on developing, we're going to do some qualitative data analysis and interviews as well. So Beth and some of her students at UMSL are going to soon get a process together to be able to interview some of the people that we interact with on the client end and see, you know, what their experience is and how they see the court process on their end too. And that's, you know, once we get that going, we're excited to share those types of data with you as well.
Well, I'd love to talk to you about that process. So send us your emails and I'll get in touch.
Sure.
And yeah, I should say Miranda's just been fantastic as our project director. And so we'll make sure, I can't write into the chat box, but we'll make sure someone gets our email. And then I'm on Google at UMSL, so you can always find me as well. I know I've met some of you. So
thanks, Beth. Thank you.
How long is the grant funded, and when will we have to start reapplying?
Yeah, so it ends, oh, sorry, go Beth. Okay, so we're funded until this month, actually, and we're doing a no-cost extension from this current grant period to go into 2021. And then we are currently in the process of getting our grant application together for another round, which we hope to get for 2 more years, and that'll start around January of 2021.
Thank you very much, ladies, for the presentation. And as the board members have mentioned, we'll be following up to assist or to hear any other pertinent information to help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you all.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Darby, who's going to give us the jail census, talk about the camera installation project and the Trinity food service update, and give him an opportunity again to tell us again what is currently your title and your vision, and then we'll move on.
Again, good morning again. My name's Darby Howard, Deputy Director, formerly and now interim director as of yesterday, Bergen County Executive Office appointment. As I said earlier, my goal in the 30+ years is the best interest of St. Louis County, the people in this jail, the community, and the safety and security of everybody who works in here. That's my first priority. In moving forward, that's what I want. My objective is moving forward and continue to operate on best practices, partnerships we have with medical, continue to combat this dangerous pandemic we have in the community, keep our staff and inmates safe. That's another priority. We've done so and working together, continue that effort. And just moving forward with the today's census, our current population, 830 total, which consists of 760 male inmates and 70 male. And as far as the update on the Trinity new contract, food provider, we did the transition. We started about a week or so ago, and we've been getting feedback, some good, some bad, but thus far the transition has been pretty successful as far as the logistics and everybody's operating, the supplies are getting delivered, inmates are getting their food on time. Meals are warm. Myself, Mr. Weaver, tested one of the inmate meals, tried one, sample one on last week. It was edible meal. I think they're going with the no seasoning thing, looking at the content of salt as far as diets. Me and Valerie's talked about. They get that offering different variations for those that are diabetic inmates to give them a different caloric intake. I think Valerie's going to talk on that a little bit as far as those different varieties. This is a really good thing as far as combating those with high blood pressure in our population.
Yes, we've had a really, really successful partnership with Trinity so far. My team has worked with their nutritionist for the last several weeks to, we've really come away with a redesigned approach for a variety of meals that can be tailored based on for women inmates, for pregnant inmates. We've expanded the diabetic options so that it better meets the needs that we're seeing within our population. We came away with, I forget the number of new diets now, but we were able to expand it quite significantly. Heart healthy. So what we plan to do is, as time goes on, is be able to take some of the information that we see today, before and after sometime with these new meals, and look at the actual health outcomes of this population, because we really do think that it's on the right path to legitimately improving the health status of the inmates, because we're able to feed them better quality food.
As far as updates on our camera installation, it has been due to COVID and postponed into October as far as delivery. And Ray Vaughn, he was our IT person in charge of that project. Ray, just give me a little bit on.
So the project has started, but it started remotely. Unique Security out of Alabama is building our touchscreens. It's part of the upgrade. Cameras have already been ordered. They've been delivered to Unique Security in Alabama. We're adding a total of 40 new cameras to the 100+ system we already have. This will give us views, 360-degree views in the housing units. Every single housing unit in our rec yards, and we're also adding an additional camera in our kitchen area where inmate workers are. And I'm also giving a camera to medical for the pharmacy area. Again, they're supposed to fly in October and start that project. It's about a 2-month project. I'll be the lead on it, and we'll make sure it gets completed successfully. Thank you.
I'll have questions.
So the cameras.
Yes, sir.
You said they'll be here in October, and it'll take about 2 months for installation.
Well, it's a security electronics upgrade package, so it's including cameras, touchscreens, new server that controls those touchscreens. There's no training involved. We're keeping the same mapping. The physical plant hasn't changed here, so there's no training besides me on the 360 camera. We already have a few of them in use. Grabbing video a little more difficult on them because I can't fast forward as fast as I can on other cameras. I want to go in 2-speed when we're looking for incidents, but we'll have more space on the camera server as well. So, like I said, they'll start. The plan was to start in August, and we're hoping to be done by October, and unfortunately just pushed back. But they've stayed in contact with me, let me know the equipment's in, let me know they're building the touchscreens. They got all the monitors in for the touchscreens.
So it'll be completed by December? That's what I'm understanding.
That's my hope, yeah. Hopefully there's no more delays. It's a big project. I think it was at 400,000, 450,000.
Okay. Any questions to the interim director? Anybody? Okay.
Hey, Reverend, it's Dr. Garza.
Yes, sir.
Hey, is there any way that we could get a current organization chart? We got one when we first started with Lieutenant Colonel Doyle, but I don't know if it's been updated. So is there any way we could get one and have names associated with the leadership blocks?
Yeah, yes, sir. I made the request this morning.
Yeah, so
Great.
we're doing some fine tuning to it, and we'll get that to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions to the interim director? Were there any visitors? No visitors. I'd like to open up again. Are there any closing comments from the board?
When you said visitors, I wondered, did you mean public comments? Were any public comments submitted?
Yes, no public comments were submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Any closing comments from any of the board members? Okay, I just have a couple of, as we know, when we were given this charge last July, I know, Mary, you and I are quoted quite a bit as talking about transparency and accountability. So I think I'm gonna, again, rephrase it. I feel like I'm preaching the same sermon, which I try to do most Sundays. Transparency goes beyond just getting the information to us as an advisory board. The transparency needs to be extended to the community. So I know we've discussed and made resolutions and going forward with independent investigation for full transparency. I know Dr. McBride, Mary, and myself, we have spoken with some of the council members. So Jeff, Dr. Garza, Twyla, I apologize. There's going to be a start of a public hearing with the Justice, Health, and Welfare Committee of the council members that will take place this Tuesday. Unless things change, it's scheduled for Tuesday at 2:30, which will give us, Mary and Tim, an opportunity to talk to the council to begin a discussion of what we believe and our experiences with the board. So that's in addition. We're still asking, obviously, for the independent, but now we're going to utilize the people's voice, our elected officials' voice, to hear what our issues are and allow those elected officials to help us continue to strengthen what's going on inside this jail. The accountability factor becomes everybody who's a citizen of St. Louis County. We have to hold each other accountable, and what better way to do it than to start with our elected officials and helping us in this task to help this department. It should be noted, as much as we do appreciate what medical is doing and continues to do, there are correctional officers that are putting their life on the line with those same COVID situations and circumstances. So it should be noted that we are just equally appreciative of what the correction side is doing. And that should be noted throughout the staff in the building. So collectively, we'll fix this. I anticipate it's going to be turbulent. And there's going to be some days that our feelings are going to be hurt. But we're going to have to get over that and keep moving if we want to carry out the charge and the mission of protecting everybody in this building. And that just doesn't mean their physical protection. It also means their emotional protection. Some of the things that Dr. Garza and Mary and others have alluded to of what we've read, it would be totally disgraceful if my daughter or my niece or my wife or any woman that I know worked in this jail under these circumstances that have been reported. Whether we talk about was there a Me Too movement, right now, this stuff is going to have to stop. And that's why it needs to be frozen That's why what Jeff Smith is saying about a moratorium, let's hold and stop and see, because these didn't happen 10 months ago. They've been long-lasting behaviors. I'm not in here preaching any moral code, but it affects the workplace. As a former veteran in the military, fraternization was huge. Fraternization was huge, and it affected, if fraternization went on so much, God forbid we ever had to go to war and depend on somebody, and there's fraternization, because people die. It's no different in this jail. The fraternization and the behaviors have been that deep that affect everybody in this building, or you're putting yourself at risk. You're killing each other's careers. You're breaking down families. You're divorcing families. Those are all not healthy and unacceptable outside these walls and inside these walls. And that should be noted when we talk about an investigation. It's going to be deep. It's going to be transparent, and we'll still obviously have to protect those rights of the names. But the behaviors, we'll talk about the behaviors. And if anybody wants to resist that, then we welcome the resistance. I want to make note that the next meeting should be scheduled for September 26th. That's our normal scheduled meeting. But based on all that has been happening, board members, please check your schedules, because I believe we're going to call a special meeting before our regular fourth Friday in September, because the issues are great. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Phil, as to this Tuesday meeting and our discussion about a broader conversation with the community, I know we have several times talked about listening sessions, talked about going out in the community and listening to people, and it just never came to fruition because we were, for all kinds of reasons, we came on board after 5 deaths, and so it's, it hasn't been what I would call typical. But if the point of Tuesday's meeting is to have a broader community participation and communication, I really want to plead with the county to do a better job of communicating with the community about these things, which means posting it and putting it on social media and putting it on, you have a Facebook page, and posting it on the website and announcing it. I mean, I think otherwise, these meetings that happen during the day are difficult for most working folks to attend anyway, but we limit the possibility of even listening in and participating when we don't. I mean, I think this is part of transparency. When we don't publicize easily and widely that we're even having sit down to discuss this with our council members.
Thank you. I'm done with my sermon. I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Roll call. Yes.
Dr. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Garza,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Muted, I think.
Ms. Lee,
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, I said yes.
Yes.
Ms. Schmidt,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Have a good day.